Welcome back to Catterall's Corner here on Sporf. Time to review UFC 264 and what a night it was at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Of course, it was all about that main event between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, but there's other little bits and bats to talk about as well. We had a guy doing a backflip somersault into mount. Don't worry if you don't know what that means, I'll explain it a little bit later on. We also saw a guy on debut become a bit of a fan's favourite after taking a beating for 14 and a half minutes against a UFC superstar. I'll tell you about that as well later on too. And this is going to sound weird, dancing to Spice Girls and drinking pints of lager out of strangers' shoes. That happened as well. But let's get stuck into that main event first. Right, main event at UFC 264. Poirier, McGregor 3. Poirier gets his hand raised via TKO, courtesy of a doctor stoppage. I'm sure you've seen the images by now where Conor McGregor falls back on his leg and it snaps in half, cracking the tibia and the fibia. He's had surgery, allegedly he's on the road to recovery, and we wish him all the best. That's coming from everybody here at Sporf. But let's just talk about the true narrative of the fight, because that's the headline. And that headline keeps Conor McGregor alive in the UFC. The fight though was very different. First minute, Conor comes out, loads of spinning stuff, looks very, very good, no doubt about that. But once Dustin Poirier gets a beat on him, it's Dustin Poirier's fight. He lands a couple on the whiskers, he hurts Conor, Conor initiates the clinch, he goes for a guillotine attempt, it ends up on the mat, and Dustin Poirier dishes out some vicious ground and pound. Of course, the last 10-15 seconds of that, where Dustin Poirier is putting it on and getting himself into a fight finishing scenario, is of course initiated with that leg break. Would that have happened if the leg doesn't break at that particular moment? Probably not, but the momentum of the fight most certainly was pointing in the direction of Dustin Poirier. Now, Conor McGregor has a different opinion. He thinks that everything was going tremendously well, and in the second round, if he would have been allowed to carry on without a leg break, of course, he would have been able to change the momentum of the fight. Has he done that previously? Yes, he has, against Chad Mendes, and that's what a lot of fans will be referring to right now. He got his backside handed to him in that fight in the first round. He turned it round and got the knockout. One thing to note though, Dustin Poirier is a much better fighter than Chad Mendes. And Dustin Poirier now, as I said on last week's preview show, will most certainly go on to fight for the UFC Lightweight Championship of the World against Charles Oliveira. Fingers crossed they can get that signed and sealed and done by the end of this year. What a fight that will be. I personally think Dustin Poirier is the best lightweight on the planet. Charles Oliveira is no mug. That will be a brilliant, brilliant fight. What happens now though for the notorious Conor McGregor? Well, if he is legitimately finished in that fight against Dustin Poirier, I genuinely believe his time in the sunshine at the elite level of the UFC is well and truly over. But as I said, the headline here is that that fight finished because of a doctor stoppage, TKO, leg break. That narrative keeps Conor McGregor alive in the UFC. Go away, heal up, get fit, come back and I would say have an interim fight before rolling it back once again with Dustin Poirier. And don't rule this out either. If Dustin Poirier becomes the champion, expect in 2022, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor 4 for the UFC Lightweight Championship of the World. I know that sounds crazy right now, but that narrative of that leg break enables Conor McGregor to keep cracking on. In all reality though, let's be honest with ourselves. The memories of notorious Conor McGregor are better than the current reality. Does he still have it? Only he knows. I think he's got to go away, have a real reality check, a proper deep conversation with himself as to why he wants to continue here in the UFC. And if he answers those questions successfully, come back, get a win, and who knows, fight for the title again. Now then, co-main event, I'm going to apologise. Last week I told you to look out for this one, that it would be absolute fireworks. It wasn't the most attractive thing to watch, and that is because Gilbert Burns played the perfect game plan. I told you that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is one of my favourite strikers in the UFC. When he gets into a rhythm, he is beautiful to watch, but he wasn't allowed to. Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu grappling style nullified everything Wonderboy had in the tank, and he got the job done brilliantly. He needed to do it because he's coming off the back of that loss in the title fight against Kamaru Usman, and he needed to re-establish himself in the welterweight division as one of the top contenders. What I think is going to happen next is that Gilbert Burns may fight Leon Edwards, our very own here, in a #1 contenders fight. That's because Kamaru Usman's probably going to go and fight Colby Covington. It's an inevitable narrative. That one needs to play out. Once that's done, Edwards versus Burns, #1 contender, and that will then conclude everything that we want to see in the welterweight division. Of course, there's also the biggest name there, loitering around in the background, game bred himself, Jorge Masvidal, who was in attendance for this fight at the weekend. He's still a player and the money in this division, so expect him, of course, to play a role in this welterweight division. What next for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson? He's 38 years of age. He's just lost a fight to a top contender. Is he still in there with the big boys? I would like to think so, mainly because I've got a soft spot for him, but you've got to be honest with ourselves, that was probably his last roll of the dice at getting himself a shot at the champion. Right, let's talk about the best of the rest from UFC 264. I said on last week's preview show to keep an eye out for Sugar Sean O'Malley. He's a rising star that everybody is excited about, and he was fighting a UFC newcomer nobody knew anything about, Chris Moutinho. Well, they most certainly know about him now. He's become a fan's favourite after taking a beating for 14.5 minutes against Sean O'Malley. He tried his best to get him out of there, and he just couldn't. The boy's made out of concrete. He was going absolutely nowhere. Check this out for a stat. Significant strike rounds. The most amount of shots landed in a particular round in bantamweight history. Out of the top 5, the 3 rounds that took place between these two men at the weekend are all in there. #1, #2, and now #4. Rounds 1, 2, and 3 between Sean O'Malley and Chris Moutinho, so the most amount of shots landed. Granted, all of them from Sean O'Malley, but they go into the record breaking, and well done to Dana White as well for awarding this fight of the night, where both boys deserve themselves a nice little bonus check. Other things that happened on that main card, I think you've seen this. The big heavyweight himself, Tai Tuivasa, walking out to the Spice Girls. Who doesn't like that? If you want to be my lover, that's going to go viral as well. Then knocks out a guy who isn't necessarily the fans' favourite in Greg Hardy, jumps on the cage, grabs a shoe from a celebrity in the crowd, and decides to drink a pint. That's his celebration. We see that all the time. The shoeey-vasa. He obviously does then his speech with Joe Rogan in the octagon, but then proceeds to continue the shoeys as he makes his way back to the dressing room, down in about 5 or 6 from strangers' shoes who are pouring hot sauce and various other little bits into those shoes, and he's nailing the lot. I would not like to be USADA doing his post-fight drug test. You're going to find all sorts. Of course, on the prelims, the highlight for me was probably Ilia Topuria with his sensational finish against Ryan Hall. And of course, we had Michel Pereira doing Michel Pereira things. Backflipping into mount. For those that don't know too much about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the aim is obviously to dominate your opponent by getting on top of them and getting into full mount. Most people do that the conventional way, by grappling, closing that distance, and falling, if you will, into that position. Not Michel Pereira. No. He turned around and he decided to backflip into that situation like an acrobat from the Cirque du Soleil. Sensational stuff. A highlight reel moment for the UFC. The fans in attendance got an absolute treat at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. All that rolled into one. If you missed it, you missed out. Go and search for it and watch it all over again. So there you have it. That was UFC 264 in a nutshell from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Next time, UFC 265, which takes place at the start of August, features, in my opinion, the greatest female mixed martial artist of all time. Amanda Nunes, the champ, is back in action, and I'll give you a preview next month. We'll catch you next time.